What if it's all true? Number 15, 6925. And I'm saying it needs to be an action year. And we're already halfway through it. Hashtag what if it's all true? And yet, hashtag, but wait, it's still hashtag depends on what we all do. And this is the 15th attempt to put it all in one place in a way, although I'd recommend the one right before this, which covers this number 14, which taken me some time to get to the what we all do part, that I insist is in our own control to step up and do it. We need to coordinate. We need to communicate. We need to cooperate. We need to understand who our, natural allies are, because the whole the whole ecology of the whole planet is embedded holographies of contextual cooperation, really, communities of meaning. And we've gotten away from that in our practice in the economic and also the logic of our culture that has us all pitted against each other. How we got there is irrelevant at this point, although it's useful if you want to analyze it. But I get caught up in different things that are now, I need to get to the bullet points and the essays. And then there's a series of visions that I'm just going to relate. And there's 2 tracks at least for the written material, including the videos. Who am I reaching right now? Myself, right? Notes to myself in the one mind. But it's also a record of how we develop strategies to make things happen. And so there's the address to the crew that can make some things happen. I was involved with starting the Green Party in New Mexico, and the idea of starting new things, new organizations. There's a process, and it's a doable thing. And so there's that track to get certain projects and concepts going. And I've been holding off on my art career for real because, as I say, I try to fit this in a half an hour, and I get the first 25 minutes, I get caught up in all these metaphysical musings. But I've been on this track since I was 6. Just as I turned 17, I ended up with some metaphysical visions, and then later on, when I was at Harvard, I ended up dropping out. But while I was there, and then afterwards, some economic visionings. I got to a place of visionings, and I validated that my own. I've doubled down on that. And I need to share those things. But as I say, what I was going to get to is that there may be parts of these, and especially when I get to the visions, if I can do some really tight versions of it, that I maybe can share as a booklet that people want to buy, because we need to start having some money to get the project off the ground, just minimal amounts, like video, a website. I think I need a crew of Z generations and other people. By the way, this is Mike Crazy Hat at gmail.com. It's my new hat. Somebody gave me this hat. Cool? It's almost too cool, Mike. Is there such a thing as too cool? Is that what Jimi Hendrix died from? So I keep saying, wait, there's things we need to do on the ground. Yeah, but I want to incentivize people's actions because it looks so fucking crazy and scary. So I get caught up in, and there's going to be bullet points relating to these meta contexts, even though we're going to try to get to what we all do. But it's about, like, where do we think we are in terms of reality? And you have the 3 perspectives that, however you want to cut it, they're here to stay in terms of what we're dealing with, and metaphorically as well, in terms of the energies. I don't need to get all there. But the material plane is the one that stumps the other ones, because we have to do this all on the ground. As much as you want to have, transcendence, and even, people from the spirit side want to just wave magic wands, and people from the material side say, you guys are all just, imagining shit. It's all true. We got to do both. We got to have the right meta context to incentivize our actions and be clear about what's possible. Because if you stay trapped in the material, even if you don't believe in the 2 spirit perspectives, and by the way, science is validating at least the one about the one mind, the Jehovite perspective that has an active creator force kind of bigger than the rest of the cosmos, so it kind of guarantees we're moving in a good forward way, even though there seems to be glitches. And I say, even though that may be true, it still depends on what we all do, how the rest of this planet's going to go, and it can all happen at the same time. Paradox is part of the reality of the cosmos, I dare say. And but there are paradoxes that work and others that don't. In the Jehovite perspective of the one creator, masculine energy, Godhead, there's a paradox that doesn't work right there. Creative, outgoing energy is not the first thing that happens, but it does happen. And so there's a context. I get, caught up. And when you get to the visions, it's much simpler. The vision I have of the creation myth itself is pretty simple, really. I get caught up in sidetracks, but it creates the context for where you could have an entity just as powerful as the Jehovites visualize Jehovah, and he acts in the ways that conceivably we've seen evidence of. And as I say, people that believe in all that is because they've seen evidence of it. It's not necessarily logical. You can get to some visioning of it too, is what I ended up. But I've also seen evidence of it, little bends of reality. But people from the Jehovahite side expecting a big transformation on the planet coming with a magic wand, that's not going to the way it works. It works with our own energies. So that's what I want to get to, because there's a lot of people watching. I mean, even from the materialist side, expecting governments to take care of it, or pointing fingers at businesses and saying, I don't like businesses, we need a government to control them, or however you want to do this. You don't like government, leave our businesses alone. And yet we have a collective situation that's really on the rocks. You don't have to call it global warming. You could call it breakdown of the economy that backstabs everybody and ends up with nobody very happy about any of it, and everybody in lockdown and not working together and having to make multiples of things that could have been done once and made to last. Look at what we're doing to the Congo in terms of all these energies, in terms of, that was a distraction, in terms of all these materials we're extracting so that people can buy a new iPhone every year. And all of our AI and Wi-Fi, it's a limited span we have to use these tools to get to a new paradigm that really works. And, you have different versions of trying to do it, right? In other words, there's China trying to, they have a serious issue to deal with, all their people and all those resources and the way they're approaching it. Now you have the right wing in the United States. And another big bullet point is how from a saying, a slogan I came up with for the Green Party when I was there in New Mexico, as we were rising, for a minute we appealed to both sides. Kind of libertarian green, where we were in New Mexico, you can talk about this. And it's like, there's another big bullet point, survivalist / utopian. Because if you really connect to survivalist needs, that's also the best way to live, strong and connected to real energies. And so you have all these homesteading things happening. You have a lot of good stuff happening right now. See, I'm feeling validated, as I say. You have the breakdown of the, even though you got it, man, people pointing fingers at the status quo, but you got to be impressed how it hasn't broken down already. And thank God, God, you want to say? Maybe. As I say, so, but what I want to inform is if you have the meta context, just like, regardless of what you believe personally, just take the situation on the earth in terms of what we're doing as fitting into this three-sided meta context, where you have a Jehovah force that is pushing it forward. We're meant to understand and get better at things as we understand it. And yeah, there's a fallacy there that Jehovah could wave a magic wand and it's all perfect, like in advance. As if, how could he visualize perfection before there's even a material plane? Such a big fallacy there. So there are paradoxes that don't work. So evolution is real, and we have to work these things out in detail on the ground. It's a sequence. Time is kind of irrelevant. If we're going with the one mind, then we're all eternal souls, and it's all now. and I guess infinity, but it's still just now and here. This makes it metaphysical, and I've wasted 10 minutes doing that. Wasted. So these points will become bullet points, and you have a metaphysical argument I'm making in terms of how we should feel inspired to each of us pick up the karma of what we're doing, regardless of what you believe. Now, especially the material plane activists who really want to make a difference. Well, dudes, this is how you really make a difference. Make it really clear to people investing more money into this system that that's not going to yield results in the long run when we have the situation that the whole planet's depleted of its genuine resources, and we're losing touch with our populace in terms of what giving them jobs, and the whole thing's out of control. So you talk about ventures that can bring back community, and you need what? You need land base, you need some production facilities, or you need to be in a network relationship. I would say cooperative network relationship with the whole network of production facilities that would sustain your modern living lifestyle. And that seems ridiculously out of reach. But it can happen if people understand the goal. As I said, I've had two visions of it. One was you try to do it all at once from one source, and what I call Utopiaville, the dream of 17 corporations. Back in 75, while I was at Harvard, I had that vision of like some global corporation in 75 had a committee meeting where somebody said, hey, you know what, if we keep doing this, we're all screwed in 50 years. And this was, the Club of Rome backed that theory, and we're seeing it. We're seeing how things are breaking down in different ways. I give it 20, if we just go along this path 20 years from now, it's out of control, and not in a good way. Things may happen sooner than that. And if we're going to keep it under control and move it in a good way, they need to happen sooner than that. And that's my point, and I spend a lot of time doing that. So those will be bullet points too. So those are all bullet points towards a strategy document about what intrepid citizens can do outside of the idea that you're going to vote for something, because then you're invoking a whole bureaucracy that you really have no handle on, especially one as large and powerful as the nation state. So that's why I talk about the Neighborhood Party Unlimited as a possible venue where we can coordinate things. And by not being official, we don't become anybody's enemy, and you allow for the possibility of projects that bring people together. Because how you shift the whole economy is you start stealing customers, People get drawn to the new paradigm because it's healthier. And there's ways to draw regular businesses into it, and there's ways to draw people. Everybody's convinced already that we may need to try something new, but they don't know quite what. A lot of people already understand quite what. You have to be healthier, have to be more responsible for everything you're doing, because you can't trust what's out there. So you have to heal what's out there, but you also have to have compassionate discernment yourself. My point. People already know what they can do, but they're stuck in this situation where they've got jobs, they don't need money for things, and until there's an alternative to that, they're stuck there. But you can start having the dialogue and have people visualize and piecemeal start picking up on it. So there's different fronts. I've seen this as a 17 by 18 matrix of fronts. Complication. The first one is food, but there's also methodologies that are different. It's if we're kind of replicating the complexity of an ecology on a planetary level, that includes a species that's doing all we're doing by way of manipulation, it's going to get complicated. And we're seeing how complicated it is, and it gets lethal complicated if we're not on top of the changes and move it in a healthy way. And we've lost some of our grounding in real principle, people's integrity as individuals, the whole libertarian thing. And as we told them, the Greens were trying to say, there was the Libertarian Green Caucus when I was co-chair in 95, 97 in New Mexico, when we first launched Ralph Nader, who got nearly 5% one time nationally. There was a moment where that was real, when we were almost a grassroots movement. Before the finger pointing of the left, that whole mental construct of pointing fingers at the elite. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Um, this is the methodology we're all involved with right now until we find something different. And so people need to get outside that old paradigm of like it's you versus the world that we're all in. And you can, regardless of how we got there or why, is it because somebody wanted to market stuff to us from an evil point of view? No, because marketing to everybody was what people were doing. Made sense at the time till we understood how limited the ecology really was and how we really need to coordinate it. So now you got to get to the same thing on a very complex level, but consciously. So you make the case. And so there's going to be documents for how how you make the case, then how you break it out as a movement. Because I'm saying you can this is why you need a website. Because you can make the case and even an app. And as I say, AI may be exactly what we need to explain to each different sector or position of potential transition, how to actually do it smoothly. And once you figure out what that is, you start to do it today in fractal fashion. The new paradigm is about connecting communities of interaction, meaningful interaction that are based on securing a resource base. And in other words, replace what's now happening, which is we're getting our resources kind of blindly, not being completely responsible for it on so many levels, letting strangers handle most of the exchanges. When why would there be any strangers on this whole planet where we all came from community and family? Yeah, but it's been broken up, and what's the point? Finger pointing is irrelevant. I bring it to the spiritual dimension here for a minute because there's a spiritual dimension that keeps it abstract and impersonal, and that's where most of the left energies go when they go spiritual. They go Buddhist. They do not go to the creator God version. And you have more than a disagreement. You have an actual clash between these two spirit camps. Essentially, the Buddhist one right now is accusing the Jehovite of toxic masculinity. But there's a way things work, and that doesn't matter what you believe. And so now we're in a situation where there may be a possible coming together of healthy right-wing methodology of being responsible personally and have it be real with respect to genuine resources, how you get things done. And then you can begin to approach left-wing ideals of taking care of everybody and justice and having the cruel parts not be part of the system. Because people don't want to be cruel, but there's a cruelty in a system that doesn't value you as part of the natural community because it's already been destroyed. And now the only way to account is to be strict about, what's his credit rating? In a community, nobody asks you your credit rating. They ask, hey, brother, what do you need? Can I massage your shoulders for a minute while you sip some of this tea or what have you, figure out what you're doing next? Come back. Be part of the community and the family of meaning and resource that keeps us together. Now, it seems impossible that we're going to do this in the complicated world that we have right now and all that's just going to crash. Yes, it's going to crash if we just keep going and not deal with, first of all, what we're doing in order to understand what we could do. What we're doing is more complicated than what we could do. What we could do is come back to meaningful, simple things that kind of make sense in terms of, this is what I love to do. These are my people. This is the community. This is the food. Now, the food system going from industrial mass production to local permaculture and different ways, that involves much more hands-on, and there's going to be a need for jobs when people get AI out of the system. As I say, I think AI is exactly the right impetus we need to start handling this before the real crash, which is the resources are going to be starting to be scarce, and then it gets bloody. Not that it's not already bloody. But people want to visualize big changes, and they think you got to do it from the top down. So there's no way to do it from the top down. The top is insulated because it's the way that this system runs. It's so deep into the paradigm. There's no way to think outside the box on that one. Not because it's motivated to defend its paradigm, yes, but it's just indoctrinated by its own success people that get that far. So the change has to come from outside the box thinking. But that's what needs to happen this year, is translating that outside the box thinking, such as me, into bullet points and essays that venture capitalists can understand, but also regular people. And I think I wanted to mention the way movements happen is you steal generations as they come up. So a lot of people, as again, see if there's more. You have a website that is complicated. I was going to mention the two visions. The second one about in 2013, it was 45 tribes got together and partied, and then the elders said it's war quitting, and then we needed to select 18 frontline tribes. So now, if you're not going to be one organization, you need 18 different projects, probably iterated 17 different ways. And so one of the things is, what are all these students going to do? What are all these, and you take this on. Don't we have an army of activists and people, concerned citizens and intrepid citizens? Don't we have an army? People that show up and vote? Well, what about showing up and helping put together some of these projects? So there's ways to get these movements happening locally, and I've got experience there. You write little flyers, you explain the logic, but then you create, little samples of the energy. And so, a community-based paradigm is described intelligently, and then people get to bring it home to where it really means personally to them. You try to find jobs in that context instead of working for strangers and coming home with coin and then having to buy your resources from strangers. You try to work more directly for your resources with people that you've made a relationship with consciously. And that's going to be a lot of work. And it's going to be a big transition, but it's something all of us can start taking part in. And that's what needs to happen. And this can happen while we vote for people in government, and governments can try to handle that shit on the big scale. But right now, governments are responding to the industrial economy and all those lobbyists and all that. And how does the transition happen when it comes from so small a scale? You stay on the live front of the networking possible, and there's more organic scale in this approach. But once you're involved in a cooperative network of resource, it's cooperative as opposed to exploitive and competitive. You end up with two economies, one that builds this network of community and one that basically is in transition from the what I call commodity-based, not to call it backstabbing, exploitive, slave labor-based, the commodity-based economy that has us thinking in terms of money instead of human values. So you can, do something that's like destroying the world and yet pile up a bunch of money doing that. We've got examples of that. We don't need to get into that. So on the ground, I'm trying to keep it to the half hour. And I say there are like metaphysical points that get people to the idea. If you're an evangelical and you think Jehovah's real, yeah, I'm saying he's real. But he's not going to wave a magic wand. He's expecting you to take on what you believe, which is that you need to treat everybody right and do all those Christian values. Transform your economy. Are the UFOs going to be there? They're there, but what are they going to do? They're coming? No, you know what? We got to work it out ourselves on the ground. If we start letting this crash different ways, then maybe other interventions will happen. We have it within the means of the people involved right now, which is 99%. I don't want to say the 99% that have to point fingers, the elite. It's 99% of everybody that's like ready to just work together at this point. And the real resources are connection to the planet. Are there enough bits of land that we can get all the food we need from more local source resources? And as you start transitioning into that, the industrial corporations with all of their money and everything and all the wherewithal, once they understand the logic of where we're going with this, they're not going to want to fight it. You're going to have them the breakdown of schools. When you see the complexity of this, but it's also a complexity of opportunities. With AI and the internet, all schools are obsolete in a way, especially their campuses. But the campuses are a perfect place to start a new community. And these can be flexible. And how do you get to that? You can't figure it out in advance. But there's many ways to start approaching it from the logic of it. So we're going to need a website. I'm going to try to get that together. I've got some resources, but I end up giving too much away and I don't have enough to saved. So maybe we'll do a GoFundMe to get people into this concept. But I think the idea is that it doesn't take, we don't want a mass movement ahead of the actual practice that we can offer. Because then you get into all the finger pointing and that's part of what's going on out there that's not getting us there. People want to have it all solved in their minds before they start doing something. That's the political approach that's really not ever going to get there. At least one thing I hope people get out of this last election is that a lot of the things you want to see happen are not going to happen through politics. Because even the best intentioned politics, if you want to think the left are the best intentions, which I do, but you see how they got corrupted. To where it was, oh my God, this was 1984 with the bending of truth and the stifling of voices and the pushing of weirdness and the getting away from what the fuck. Anyway, now the right wing, let's just tear it all up. That's what works, at least for now, till we have a new logic. Here's the point about that. You got to heal it at that level. You have to, in other words, the business, you have to talk to the right wing and get it understood that the new logic of community-based paradigm that may heal the planet by reining in our resource use and making it possible to work less and have everything we need. And also, we've got not just artificial scarcity, but we've got artificial insanity by people not connected to their communities. And it sounds like a lot of professions and specialties may be out of business this way. But if you do a transition, start somewhere. I want to point out, I think Tallahassee is a perfect location, and that's why I got dragged here. If you just buy in all those meta versions of that I mentioned, I believe in spirit. It works. What the hell? I asked to be brought to the front lines of activism, to my spirit posse. I call them my spirit posse. Take me to the front lines of activism. Make me a ninja on the way. They're trying to kill me as far as making me a ninja. I don't know how that's going to work, but because one of my visions that I've had was the previous life vision, and after I got killed in that one, but I was a hermetic priest at that point, or at least I had done some of the. I was a scribe, so I had transcribed all those texts, and something was telling me that I was going to be on point right now for something right now from back then. I can make a little, and I need to, because this needs to be a presentation both for my activist crew. And then we get a website going on. And then you could probably define an app that lets anybody from anywhere, whether you're Exxon or some bum on the street, in the most positive way. Somebody not buying into the bullshit. That wants to connect to something real. Says, I am a bum on the street right here. And I got nothing but my heart and my body. Where do I go? Connect me up. Or you're Exxon. You say, yeah, man, I'm kind of want to see how we can wind this down to something that works for the whole planet and people have sovereign integrity over their resource base. How do we do this? AI app, or how do we do this, Mikey? Because maybe I have vision of it, but it starts that way in different, and you have to go for it from all angles. Get over the idea that there's only one way to do this. The one way to do that is that we got to do all the different ways at the same time. That's the one way to do it. So, that's how that happens. In case anybody was wondering. But, I'm not saying, hey, man, people like to have styly hair. That's the thing they do. I like to have styly weird beard, which means I need metal. I hate metal. But it's everywhere. I love it now. What the hell? I don't want to be the one mining it. All right, so this is another 30 minutes that kind of got general, and maybe I can even be more specific than that. But the point is, there's a meta context. It makes sense. All the freaky shit, it's going to get, look, if Jehovah's real and he's here and this is a showdown that counts for the whole cosmos. If it's a one mind, it counts for the whole cosmos. And he's here and he's going to make it like heaven on earth like and Judgment Day. Then the worst of it's going to be here too. So get over that part. And pointing fingers is just not effective unless you're making a clear analysis of what you're doing and then proceeding on to making some constructive suggestions.